First, 5 Supreme Court justices have ruled that the Rwanda policy is unlawful. Sunak has fired Braverman, who was the architect of the Rwanda plan. It's already cost £140 million, plus almost £2 million in legal fees paid for by us, the taxpayer, and not a single plane has taken off. It strikes me that this government, in relation to the Rwanda plan, is behaving like a really irritating ex-boyfriend. They cannot accept for one moment that it is all over. They need to go away and move on. Why won't they? Call 0345 6060 973 or you can text 84850. What I'm trying to get at is the politics of what is holding Sunak back. I want to really do a deep dive with you about the politics, what the heck is going on. Now, in case you are hiding under a rock or frankly just had your hands on your ears because you can't take any more politics, here's a little reminder of what happened in the week that was. The government's Rwanda asylum policy, which it says, this is the key bit, is crucial to tackling small boats, is in absolute disarray after the UK's highest court ruled it was unlawful. The Supreme Court upheld a Court of Appeal ruling which said the policy leaves people sent to Rwanda open to human rights breaches. And crucially, this is the crux of it. It said that there was a substantial risk that asylum seekers sent to Rwanda could be then sent back to the very countries where they were fleeing persecution from. It means that the policy cannot be implemented in its current form. Rishi Sunak said the government would work on a new treaty with Rwanda and said he was prepared to change UK laws. But why? Why are they bothering now? It has become totemic for the Tory party. And I think we are now at the stage where it's more likely to break the Tory party apart internally than it is to actually bind it together and make it a fighting force at the next general election. And we can go into detail on that as the conversation proceeds. But as I say, millions and millions and millions of pounds of public money, good money being thrown after bad. It's just bad government at this point, regardless of where you stand on the small boats issue. That's my take on it. So why do you think Sunak won't dump it? 0345 6060 973 and the lines are open now, or you can text 84850. I don't know. Mind went blank for a moment. Listen, I'd prefer to talk to you though. 0345 6060 973. Jonathan Lis is here to start the conversation, political journalist. Right, can we just go back a few days, Jonathan? The government was interesting, actually, in its response to the ruling by the Supreme Court justices. It struck me, anyway, that once the decision was handed down, they were very quick to say, well, actually, we've got a plan B. What was that plan B?
Well, the plan B is to arrange a treaty with Rwanda, as you were saying. We don't know the full details of that. It seems, that there could be a sort of strange situation in Rwanda where basically the policy doesn't distinguish between people who are accepted as refugees and those who aren't accepted as refugees, because they'll all stay in Rwanda because no one will be sort of sent back to country of origin. And there was a very strange idea that maybe some people would actually be sent back to the UK, and I'm not entirely sure what the government's line on that is, but it would just be the bleakest of ironies if Rwanda had sort of accepted the refugees who are sort of deemed to be legitimate asylum seekers, and those who weren't were sent back to the UK to go back to square one. But the point is, Sangita, that you can get into the weeds of this, and it's a very, very silly policy, as you and I both agree, but the fundamental issue is that even if this policy would succeed, it would only account for a tiny fraction. And when I say succeed, I don't mean in the moral sense. I mean by, within its own terms. It would only accept a tiny fraction of the number of asylum seekers in the UK. So I think Rwanda, there's some reports that say it was 200 refugees that could go there. Others, the most generous one that I saw was 1,000. And look at the fact that 27,000 people have arrived on small boats this year alone. And so the really dishonest thing, and what this is the most important thing, and the most dishonest thing, is that this has taken up all of the bandwidth, all of the kind of the agenda, the kind of the publicity of this policy, but it was never going to solve this problem, even on its own terms. And that is why I think that people should be furious with the government, regardless of where they stand on the rights and wrongs of the Rwanda policy, and as you were saying, stop the boats, because this was never going to be an answer. This is meant to be a distraction. It was meant to be a government that thinks something must be done. This is something, even though it's incredibly expensive, it's incredibly immoral, racist, imperialist, and a complete waste of political time and capital and money. Here is something that we're going to do, championed by the very worst people in government, pandering to the worst instincts of their core supporters.
What's really extraordinary about this is I decided to go and have a look at the snap polling that was done just after the justices handed down their decision, right? So this is from YouGov. 71% of the British electorate thinks Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak's Rwanda plan should be scrapped, replaced, or just don't know. And that's according to YouGov snap polling, right? And that, to me, Jonathan, undermines the government's central claim that this is the will of the British people. And that's why they have to reintroduce or introduce the first time emergency legislation to get this off the ground. I mean, let's just tackle that for a start, okay? You're calling it a distraction, which I understand. But is there any evidence at all that the great British public are behind this plan, even now, 18 months after it was first announced?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they are. And actually, when you look at, so there's been sort of detailed polling. My friend Christabel Cooper works for one of the Labour polling organisations, and they've done a lot of research, and they say that actually people tend to support Labour's policy on immigration when you actually sort of ask specific questions about it. And so the government basically, if you look at it in the sort of the broadest political context, the government is staking the whole house on Stop the Boat. Stop the Boats has now become the government's raison d'etre, much like Brexit was before that. It's the raison d'etre. They're putting everything on this because they are desperate to retain the so-called red wall. That is the strategy. All the eggs in that one basket. They think that the people who won in the 2019 election, based on Brexit, not based on stopping the boats, based on Brexit. Obviously, migration was a part of that, but that was legal migration, by the way. So they are desperate to retain those voters in an attempt to mitigate what is surely going to be an existential level, potentially, defeat next year. And they think that the red wall is frankly, they think that those people are incredibly xenophobic. They think that they want migration stopped above everything else, even though the polling suggests that the cost of living is by far and away the most important issue facing all voters, followed by the NHS. I think actually climate change registered above migration as a voter's biggest concern, I think 23%, 17%. So this is not the big issue they think it is, but even it's incredibly patronising, condescending to the red wall voters, because those people are decent people like everyone. The Conservatives are actually sort of pandering, they're projecting their own prejudices onto their voters. That's really what's happening.